taxi driver was happy.
I know, they were very surprised. And
Yeah,
I was like, oh, no, don't worry.
surprised.
And they were like, are you sure? And I was like, oh, it's just I have to help my grandpa. It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Right.
And, I mean, I definitely made them happy, but maybe that wasn't the right thing to do.
I actually, before coming to the show, I shared this, I was going to do the interview topic on today with a friend, and he said, when he went to Japan, he's a Caucasian guy, and then normally he orders the drinks, he would pay for tip. And in fact, his son said, don't do that, Dad, because it's indicative, it's an insult. I didn't know this, but I guess in the Japanese culture, or in Japan, not here, obviously. I actually got another story about that. But in Japan, if you leave a tip, it's considered an insult. I don't know why, but it was considered an insult.
Yeah, I actually heard about that too. I heard that a lot of people think that, or they feel that it's demeaning when you're giving them, because you're kind of, in a sense, giving them free money as if they need it, and it's more like a charity case, I guess you could think. So I think that's why, that's a huge cultural difference. Whereas here in America, especially, let's say...
Free money.
Yeah,
like,
free money. I welcome
happy,
tips, especially if you work in the food service. I mean, I could be a charity case. You can give me your free money, right? It's so different.
And a great publicity for these celebrities, because you always hear on the stories and say, oh, whom leave me $100 tip or $500 tip and that kind of stuff, right? I think a few years back there were even a story where an old lady or an old man left a huge sum of tip to this waitress because I think she told him that she really needed the money to take care of her son and stuff like that. So. I guess there's a very big cultural difference in terms of etiquette and paying tips.
And I think it's just the people. Our sense of pride is probably different here. We're very cautious, and we want to make sure that, we talk about ourselves in a very humble manner. Whereas in other countries, maybe they like to have more pride, and they wouldn't want to be seen as charity cases or as, needing money in any case. So it's different.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, America, Western culture is always known as a service country. You provide good service. Even our export, we're #1 biggest service export in the whole world. So service is very important to us. So I guess our value, our human capital value, rather not labor, but rather the service provided. I think that's why we developed this customary things about tipping. So we got to take a quick break. When we come back, I'd like to talk about what is the right amount of tip. People always say 10, 15%. Sometimes, if you like, they give up 20%. But we keep hearing various stories from friends and family. So let's come back and maybe spend some time and talk about that. Welcome back to Community Roundtable. Again, my name is Henry Huang, your host for the show. Our in-studio guests today are Marisa Wahl as well as Joyce Huang. And we were talking about, as well, headline says, is gratuity mandatory? Because recently, a big national news where a teenage couple, well, not a teenage couple, but a college couple were actually arrested because they refused to pay tip for bad service. We spent the first half of the show talking about some story about that, but when we lit up with, what is, if we do want to pay tip, what is considered a normal, or I guess correct amount to tip the service you receive? For example, when we go into a restaurant, mostly we leave tip because we go to a restaurant. My understanding, well, the story I go by is for lunch hours it's 10%, for dinner it's 15 to 20%. But everybody's got their own story. For my mom, because my mom's from different part of the country, she thinks women should pay tip. Right? I educate. There's a lot of education going on. Once you come to a new country, different culture and so forth. I would say, hey, at least 15% for tip. If we're going for dinner. But, what about you guys? You guys, what do you think is the right tip?
Well, I generally stick to the 15% rule. I've actually never heard of like the lunch being 10%, but that's interesting. It's hard now, especially because the tax in Los Angeles has skyrocketed.
Right.
So to think, oh my gosh, I'm paying 10% on top of that, and then giving 15 to 20%. But I try to stick with 15% unless the service is so terrible. I have no problems giving less than that, because you're at a restaurant, you expect a decent service. So
right.
yeah.
And I even have friends incidents where, to make a statement, some people would just walk out, but he actually pay a penny.
Oh wow.
To leave a statement saying how bad the service he got. He was paying a penny. But also, a lot of people, they know this, is you actually pay tip before tax, right? You two know about that. Telling the audience, it's not after the tax bill of 15%. It's before they even apply tax. 10 or 15% that you want to pay.
Well, prior to the show, I actually did some research. I found an article on CNN.com, but it was actually from maybe like 2001. And so it's a little bit outdated, but it's a little more updated than the 10, 15, 20 that you were mentioning, because definitely when I was growing up, I had my parents and they had the same rule, 10% for lunch and then 15% for dinner. But I think also maybe just because of inflation and everything, usually now the rule is 10 to 15 for lunch and then 15 to 20 for dinner. And then more or less, depending on the service, and also you have to consider your own party. Say if you have children who, are spilling things, ripping things, throwing food all over the place, you definitely want to compensate your server for doing the extra service. And then, as you said, it's before the tax. But if you were to use a coupon, which is very prevalent right now in this economy, a lot of people are using coupons at a restaurant, always remember to tip the full amount and not just the new remaining amount. So if you go to a restaurant for $100 and you have a $50 coupon, make sure you're tipping for $100 and not just $50.
Because that would be not fair.
That's
a really good point. I think people forget about that too, because they just look at the bill and they look at the total.
Right. That's a good point.
Very good point.
There's a lot of education going on, especially with friends that I have from Asia. Is they don't really know what's going on with this thing, the tipping, because they're not customary to this. They don't have that, or they already put it in the bill. One story is when I went to actually on a vacation, I think it was Monterey Bay. I guess they had received a lot of international tourists, and their restaurant actually have a suggestive on the bill when they came.
Oh, I've seen that.
Have you seen that suggestive tip? Because 15% how much? 20% how much, 35% how much.
I noticed it starts at 15% too. So there's not no 10% there.
Right.
It goes all the way up too.
And as we know, like Joyce mentioned, the reason we want to pay the full amount before the coupon is used is because a lot of the servers, they live off on the tip. And I think we were talking about it before the show. They're living off on the tip. So it's not like a lot of people feel like, the restaurant owners already make a lot of money. What's, a couple dollars to them? But actually, the servers, all the tips go to the server, not to the restaurant owner. They don't supplement that. But I understand how they feel, because some Chinese restaurants, they do split the tip. Right?
And that's hard.
It definitely makes a difference. In America, I think there's many reasons and principles behind the whole tipping thing. And then most of it's just to show gratitude. That's the common reason why we would leave a tip. And then it's also to make up for some of the tips that the servers have to claim on their taxes. So not only do they sometimes earn, in some states, a smaller wage, maybe $2 instead of $6 as a waiter, they also have to claim their tips. So and they have to pay it to taxes. So sometimes they lose money if you don't tip them a good enough amount.